Two other yeses show up in time to make the decision we needed to make tonight. So welcome, unofficially, everybody. Is that somebody coming in?
I put a rock in the door if no one removed it.
Okay, let's do it.
Well, I will continue. So our agenda for today kind of came together at the last minute, as did the meeting itself. Thanks for coming out on short notice. The main reason for calling this meeting is that we do have a decision to make, hopefully sooner than later, about the facilitation contract that EPA is trying to arrange. So I'll let Diane explain that in a few minutes. But there were a couple of other things I wanted to touch base about. One has to do with our council applications that we've gotten from a couple of individuals who are still waiting to hear about what is going to happen with them. I know that at our last meeting, we had talked about Faith and I following up and discussing in a general way the composition of the council and how to ensure that it's diverse and so forth. We have not yet managed to have that conversation, and it was kind of looking like we weren't going to have a fourth meeting of the year. So again, this kind of came together too quickly to arrange for that follow-up conversation. So anyway, we still need to talk about that. I don't know if there's been any movement on that front, Faith, since we last met with the mayor or anything. He's still waiting on the outcome of our follow-up. Is that what I understand? Okay. All right. So, yeah.
Specifically, is that city council approval or what?
Well, so these are folks who've not yet been officially nominated by the mayor. So that would have to be the first step. And then it would go to council.
Yeah, what we talked about at the last meeting was a conversation that I had with the mayor that it would be good to have a recruitment strategy rather than just having us invite our friends to join. And think about that in a more intentional way to have a council that better reflects or reflects the composition and demographics of the community.
Yeah, so I mean, in this case, both of these folks came forward of their own accord, as far as I know. I mean, if they were invited by any council member, I haven't heard that, and it wasn't me. So, I definitely want to be respectful of the interest that they have indicated, and make sure we follow up with them soon. But yeah, obviously we do need to have that conversation, and it just hasn't happened yet. So apologies for that. Yeah.
Just wondering if there was an opportunity, because I know the process, but is there opportunity to have a conversation with the potential council members of this is, the commitment, what we're, obligated to do.
Yeah.
Under the state federal, like the additional roles that we're taking on voluntarily.
So,
Just so I can get a.
yeah. So both of these people, so Carol Kincaid and Dick Sadler, they've been to multiple meetings. Carol was going to be here tonight, but she had car trouble apparently, so couldn't make it at the last minute. But so they've been to our meetings. They have both already officially submitted not just statements of interest, but statements of commitment, indicating that they are committed to attending every meeting, and if they miss 3 or more, then that will mean they're off the council. So if the council feels like more is needed in that department, then certainly we could have follow-up conversations with them. they've already done more than, frankly, any of us did when we were coming on the council in terms of, you know, again, expressing that level of commitment and so forth. So anyway, you know, we can decide whatever we like, obviously, about all of that. I just want to make sure that we're doing it, hopefully, like at our next meeting, so that they're not, you know, waiting around for longer than they have to be. So.
But if you're speaking of a situation where the reason you have no control.
Well, I mean, the part that we can control is the follow-up conversation on this end. So again, I'm sorry that hasn't happened faster. But then, yeah, once we as a council have, you know, kind of decided what our plan is, at that point it's out of our hands. But my understanding is that Sheldon is pretty willing and ready to nominate these folks if we decide that fits in with our broader plan.
I think it would just be good to have something in writing that this is, you know, whatever the plan is, to state it.
So again, we can make that a priority at the next meeting. So the other part of that is that we have one council member who we haven't seen in a long time, and in fact was not answering emails and texts and so forth. That's Wendy. And I managed to get a hold of Wendy today. And you know, what I was going to do actually is recommend that Wendy resign officially from the board, because my impression was that she was not able to keep up with the commitment of coming to meetings and so forth. And the main reason for that, as I understand it, is that her husband has been very ill, and she told me she was comfortable with me, you know, sharing this. And so he's been in and out of the hospital for some time now, and it's been hard for her to do so much as write an email explaining the situation with all of that going on. So, you know, I really emphasized to her that we understand and are very sympathetic and all of that. So, you know, definitely wasn't trying to blame her or anything, but, you know, I did suggest that maybe in light of these other personal considerations, it might not be the best time to serve on the council. Her response is that she still very much wants to be involved. She's still very committed to the work, and in fact, apparently her husband is just about to get out of the hospital finally after a long time. And she's telling me that she is committed to being at our next meeting and to attending all of our meetings from there on out. So in short, she would like to continue on. That 3 meetings missed policy that we adopted a couple meetings back, you know, we technically adopted with reference to new folks who, you know, join the council in the future. We did not make it apply retroactively. We could, but my feeling is that given, you know, the personal challenges Wendy's been dealing with, and having heard that she's kind of recommitting herself to the council's work, I think that we should go ahead and let that happen, unless people feel any differently about it.
But sir, are you saying that we haven't got a form tonight that we're gonna bring up the form? It's up to Diane to call the shots?
No, I'm just talking about one of our council members who wanted to be here tonight but couldn't be here, and she's saying she'll be here the next time.
Oh, so the form is not broken.
We do not yet have quorum for tonight's meeting. We're still waiting to see if a couple of other council members show up. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I mean, like, technically, like, when this is formed, because states go to capital, you know, it's only mandated for us to meet once a year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, even us, like, making this agreement of, like, this 3 meetings, this 3 meetings should be removed, is not, I mean, it's just a practice, like, it's
Right.
not like, you know, if someone actually complains, like, that's gonna get to, you know, another path.
Right.
So I'm
Well, I wish we had a fuller group to here assembled so that we could get everybody's take on it. Larry, I don't know if you have any thoughts.
I accept that assessment.
Okay. Well, we're not in a position to take a vote on this anyway for now. So I think at this point, we're just kind of stuck waiting to see if indeed she is able to attend in the future, and if that happens, then we can take it from there. So just wanted to provide an update about that. So the next thing is that I wanted to, I'm trying to see if I can get internet connection here, because I realized I forgot to pull this up ahead of time. The next thing I have on the agenda is our discussion with Scott, and I suppose we can go ahead and get into that, Scott. I know that I didn't suggest any particular topics for discussion tonight, but if there's anything going on that you think we should know about, now I suppose would be as good a time as any to talk about it.
Well, there hasn't been anything major going on in the water plant. We were able to complete our lead and copper testing early. Preliminary, it's at 10 parts per billion. Next week, we will get the official from you of what it is, but that's what they kind of gave us in today's meeting.
Okay. Can I just ask, what is the guest access password for this building? Anybody know for this?
Open for business.
Open for
All
business.
lowercase.
Open for business. Okay.
I think that happened after COVID.
I see.
And another thing.
It worked.
About the
Yes, sir.
inspection of the furniture at the new apartment houses. The inspection, we got brand new furnitures in the houses, but the inspector wanted to respect them over it again. And we, in the city of Flint, asked the people to not allow the mirrors out. Anyway, that's what's going on in Flint, sir.
All right.
With the water.
I was not aware of that.
Furnitures, and they refuse to respect them again, because they're brand new. And now people's out there in the meanwhile being homeless, have to stay in the shelters until the city gets to communing with each other. And in the meanwhile, Diane gotta wait the form. Diane, what you gonna say about it? You done?
I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm Faith. But if you have a concern, you can come to our office during working hours, and I can try to assist you with this concern more. I'd need more information.
Yeah, I was supposed to come to the Capitol last night, but you got to pay to get in to hear the mayor address the city.
Oh, it wasn't
I
free?
figured he was supposed to address that last night, and now you're gonna finish it up tonight in this water situation meeting.
I don't think
Furnaces without water.
the mayor doesn't generally attend this
From
one.
the water department over there.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for bringing those issues
Oh, by the way,
to our
thank us, our
attention.
Bill Mitchell, for the record.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
So, Scott, I'm looking at the trend here, and in fact, this is one of the things I pulled up on my
So I brought
computer.
some copies of the trends just to give you if anybody wanted copies.
Yeah.
From 2016, where we've been, if you notice, obviously in 2016, that was the peak of our crisis, with when everything was strict, everything was exposed, and police shot tunnel that. That's why the numbers were higher.
Right.
Then we were able to get it under control. We come down, we're doing good. Now, towards the end of all the low numbers, all the tier ones are being eliminated.
Right.
You know what I mean? So don't feel we're getting worse, it's just now we're having to go to businesses. And businesses don't use near as much water, so they have a tendency to have a little bit higher numbers because some of their bathrooms don't ever get used. And one of the things personally I don't like with this is you're relying on the people to do the testing. So you hope they, have random water, throughout the week and stuff like this nature. So that's why some of the numbers are starting to climb a little because we're being forced to do more tier 2 sites. But we're getting a hold of that. We're trying to communicate better with the residents, with the businesses, and to get them to use the water throughout the week and stuff of that nature.
So, under the proposed lead and copper rule revisions, which is, we were also hoping to talk about tonight a little bit, and I was gonna bring this up in that context. The EPA is proposing to lower the action level to 10 parts per billion, right? In which case, there would have been 2 times over the last couple of years when we would have been in non-compliance, right? So that would have been January through June of 2022, and then for this last 6 months again.
With tier 2 sites?
Well, I believe so. Yeah, that
So-
would be considered.
So the
Violation.
requirement is that you have to attempt to get a test result from all the tier 1 sites before you can use the tier 2 sites. So, and Scott might be able to speak to this more, but we have added more tier 1s because of the hydrovacking. So, among the people who would not allow for excavations, there's a way to check, at least, isn't it from the main to the curb using a excavation technique? So through that, they were able to go through some of those and identify some more tier 1. So we will be adding, but the question is, if the people who didn't want us to dig a hole and check their line in the first place are going to allow us to return to collect a water sample, I'm not, I don't know how that's gonna turn out.
Our first priority are all tier 1.
It's a requirement,
There are
yeah.
some declinations that people that just say, stay off my property, I don't care, my water's fine, I'm not, I don't, that goes back to the trust. So the trust is so broken, they won't even want us on the property regardless if it's a lead line or not, my water's fine, leave me alone.
And it's the same people, we're going back to the same people each 6-month cycle, that's another requirement, they have to stay on the list, right, of the site, for the site plan.
Every 6 months, we will make an attempt at them sites again.
Yeah, so there's a level of fatigue with
Before we
that,
transition to the
yeah.
tier 2. So we have to have 60 samples per 6 months.
So the procedure then would be to reach back out to these folks, even if they've declined in the past, and to try to get their consent to sample. And then if,
The first time they told us to have the property, try it 3, 4, 5 times.
yeah. So if they don't want to consent, then at that point you start looking for tier 2 sites to put into your.
Not to belabor the point, but is there a difference between the occupant of the house, the owner of the house, or the water customer?
That's, on rentals, that's a big discrepancy. So we do the door knocking, and then when we exhaust us, we reach out to Faith, we give her the list, and then she goes through the phone list and and she finds out who the owners are, and we still make 3 or 4 more attempts. I mean, we exhaust it to the end.
How many tier 1 sites do we have in this
So
latest
with this
sample?
latest dig that they just did, they said this morning 140, I think were added to it, and we had about
80, oh yeah,
So
84
we should
in
have
the
about
last one.
200
Yeah.
total.
Oh, but some were taken off, sorry to interrupt, yeah, okay, so it was 84, and then some were taken off, and then they're gonna add like 100 plus.
But that should be more than enough in theory for an LCR sampling event, if you were able to get enough consent. Because that's interesting. So I didn't know that we had enough of those sites identified to have nothing but tier 1 sites. So in this latest sample that was taken then, how many of the samples were from tier 1 sites and how many were from tier 2? 31?
Yes.
Out of a total of
62, I think it was 61, I think we had total that were compliant. 61 total, 31 were tier 1s.
And another thing, sir, we the people of Flint, as a water warrior, we gonna treat this situation as we treated the brick situation. The, brown people, the Amigos, had to redo them bricks and with no nonsense from we the people. We gonna treat this situation about testing the water, see, it's the same way. Now, put that on record.
We've got it. We've got the video going. Thanks very much for that. All right. So, so the hope then next time around, given that we've got now a total of about 200, would be to have 100% of our samples over these next 6 months be from tier 1 sites. Okay.
And then I brought you copies of the CCR, so maybe
Yeah.
next time, I'm hoping to be at them.
Yeah.
You know, start.
Yeah.
Do it and get your input.
Okay, so yeah, I definitely want to follow up on that. But just real quick, so as far as the action level is concerned, EPA is proposing 10. These rules are not finalized yet, right? There's a public comment period that's open now. It's gonna last 60 days. There are some groups that are pushing for the action level to be even lower, say 5 parts per billion. You know, I don't know that the agency will go for that, probably not. But anyway, that's going to be probably one of the demands that's put forth over the next 60 days. Were a standard like that to be, you know, accepted, then we'd be over the action level pretty consistently, right? If you look back in time here, I'm just wondering for your.
80% of America's gonna be.
What's that?
80% of America's gonna be over that.
That's yeah. So there will be a lot of systems.
And you know, there's
that-
communities now that have had them all removed, and they're still hitting action levels.
Yeah, because of lead in fixtures and solder, internal plumbing, etc. Yeah. So I take it then, Scott, that your position would be that 5 is too low.
Yes.
What about 10? What are your thoughts about 10?
It's gonna be tough to achieve.
Okay.
You know, it can be done. I mean, I'm not saying it can't be done. We're gonna have to make it attempt.
But you're potentially preparing for a situation where, you know, we could end up in
It's gonna be
non-compliance.
tough, because, you know, as you get rid of, and the law is gonna stipulate that them tier ones will be removed one way or another in 20 years at a rate of 5% each year. You're mandated to do it. So,
But
just because
Scott-
there are holdouts, eventually they're gonna have to change the charter to mandate, you're gonna have to let us change that lead line, or we're gonna shut you out. I mean, it's just a matter of, it will happen. It's the law.
Well, Scott, you gotta have good engineers, like the one who's done them bricks. He gonna retire in 3 more months. Who's gonna replace him, Scott?
That I can't tell you. I don't know.
Good answer.
You know, like 20 years ago, there were still a lot of people smoking, you know?
Yeah.
And now it's like, you know, hardly anybody smokes. So, you know, like when you think about the population. So I'm confident one over time, you know, that will be achieved. But also wanted to know, and I know we have that as something later, but like next year for Michigan, like how it goes from 10. I mean, not to 12.
To 12, yeah, right.
Would be the action.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in some ways here in Michigan we're already out ahead of, you know, the federal standards, but in other ways what's being proposed actually would go beyond what we're doing here in Michigan. So that's one thing, is that our action level, yes, it's going to drop to 12, but it would have to drop even further if these proposed revisions go into place. Yes.
And as a pediatrician, 5, no matter how difficult it may be to maintain, is the target.
So how does that, I mean, if there were an even stricter standard adopted, Scott, how does that change the work that you're doing on a day-to-day
So what it does
basis?
is when you hit these action levels, it increases the testing.
Mhm.
So, regular, Eagle are gonna mandate more testing. So
Mhm.
we're already extra testing now because we can see. So more testing, and every time you get something that comes back with that high lead levels, you know, Faith and I are required to then, you know, 24 hours, get hold of these people, you know, do a full, you know, they try to find out why the lead's there, where it's coming from, regardless. You know, in the past it was, you know, we were only responsible for the meter, but you know, now this has become such an issue, you know, we are trying to find lead no matter what. That one resident, you know, I found galvanized nipples in the sink. You know, then I found, the actual faucet itself was an older faucet, anything 2014 and older can have lead in it. So,
In the actual
you know,
faucet.
It's just a matter of eliminating all these things. So that's what will happen. It'll increase us responding, increasing that health navigator department from 3 times the size.
So your feeling is that you don't currently have the
Always is.
capacity?
And we get just involved.
We don't get-
And I'm
yeah,
telling you, They
mhm.
double what we do. And it doesn't matter if that sample's pulled and that lead sample is on your water system and it comes back above the action level, we have to respond.
So wait a minute, Scott.
And I have limited staff as it is now.
And another thing, what he's trying to say, FEMA is standing by in case emergency happens. FEMA is, the money is already rolling in. It's up to us, up to Scotty to, do the testing with the so-called neighbors. And
I don't have FEMA funding. I don't get FEMA. Actually, we don't get any funding to do testing. We are not
you don't mind now,
funded
lady.
to do testing. For our office doesn't receive FEMA funds, and
I
yeah,
didn't know this.
I don't get any. But I don't get any general funds. I don't get any funding from DPW. We are not.
There's no federal budget.
So, I mean, from my perspective, if we're looking for lead where we know lead exists, which is how the rule is written, we will find it. And we are more likely to find it as time goes on because we are more likely to find it in tier 1s or tier 2s and tier 3s. And without funding for abatement, that will continue. The issue is if we find it, then we need to get rid of the lead, and there needs to be funding sources available for people to abate lead in their homes, and there isn't.
I think that goes back into, that's, outside of this particular body, but as residents and voters, like, one, we know that the lead capital treatment technique is unfunded. It always has been. But the key is to make sure that there are funded resources at the state level, federal level, to, do that. But then also kind of shifting that this is a public health issue too. And using that narrative to kind of be, because like we've been advocating for, I'm saying for rising, for ensuring that that there is funding, and it needs to be more people like meeting with their state reps and state senators and congressional reps to make sure that there is the funding. Because like that, this is one part of the process. It's not the end of the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's in the conversations that I've been having with people about tightening water regulations, and not just lead and copper rule, but, I've been part of an advisory group to EPA that's looking at the microbial and disinfection parts of the Safe Drinking Water Act. And there are a variety of people on there who work at water utilities and are in one way or another in the industry. And they keep on coming back to that question of capacity and cost. And that's a real issue they've got to deal with day in and day out. And I think they have some legitimate concerns about extra costs being passed along to customers, especially in environmental justice communities where you've got affordability issues to begin with. And so I'm hearing that loud and clear. But I think that sometimes the way to get things funded is to push for the stricter regulations, because then somebody can say, look, I have to do this thing by law, right? And so you've got to find a way of making that possible for me. And so, I think sometimes that's sort of the public health strategy, is to set, the strict standard, and then to say, if we're going to require this, we need to, put our money where our mouths are as a society, and make sure that the people who are having to deal with that requirement day in and day out have the resources that they need. Larry?
And if we could take it to another place, if the majority of the households are rentals in this city, and we don't have inspectors before the lease is approved, we'll just keep going to the same places without resolution. So that's another piece of the puzzle that's not addressed. And once again, if environmental justice communities bears the cost for people who consume the water unknowingly or unwillingly to do the next thing.
Absolutely. And yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I just had a question because I know y'all are in some places that I'm not, but it makes sense to me that this should fall under, HUD and some of the lead, like why isn't it a part of lead abatement? I don't.
Look at the city of New York. Their public housing, they've been covering up for decades.
I would say, like, but, you know, NDHHS just launched, you know, like a program that, like, kids who are enrolled in Medicaid within the home, like, they can get their faucets replaced, like, it's an old faucet. I mean, like, the thing is like, how they're gonna know? Like, unless they're doing the testing and just knowing that stuff can be, especially if it's, you know, some, you know, property manager or just someone who may just have a bunch of stuff in a lot of property, like, even though it may be a new installation, it could have been sitting on the shelf for, you know, for a while. So, just thinking about, like, you know, things that we have, like, control over, which is ensuring that, you know, the resources, the free resources and programs, like, are aggressively going out, you know, to community and, you know, just thinking about, like, where we're at versus where we've been, you know, like, you could pull people from the street and now they have, like, some understanding about lead and water, and that's something that we didn't have like 10 years ago. Like, that wasn't, you know, that's something, but just, you know, thinking about the victory that we already had, like how educated collectively our community is around that, and like how do we move towards like this next phase of just ensuring that, you know, people have a greater understanding on public health and these resources, and like really framing, you know, like especially like people who are living in like in these tier 1 homes, of like, no, this isn't like, you know, us being intrusive or just being all of this, like, it's not like we just, you know, 4 years and like be up in your house all the time, you know, every 6 months. But this is like, you know, like protecting your own health, you know, like saying that you know, it's preventative health of going to the doctor. Like, this is like also kind of preventative because we want to make sure that you're protected. So I just think that, you know, which is under like the Water System Advisory Council, like, you know, our charge is to figuring out like how we talk to like our community, you know, like around lead and all of these things, and testing, you know, should be part of that.
So when, with these latest tier 1 homes that were identified through the hydrovacking, are these residents being notified then that a lead line was found on their property? Okay.
Is it the state that provides that guidance? Because I know there was like a letter had to go out within 30 days, I believe, after it was identified. And does that come from the state? Okay.
But just a minute, that's what you're saying, the blue tops are for. You see these houses covered with blue tops on them? This really is, now the blue tops is getting holes in them, and it caved in people's houses, and now they have to put them in handicap position, but the people refuse to go in handicap and they rather go to the shelter instead. But nobody addressing the problem until now. She mentioned something like, and he over in New York, that's what all that trying to put us with New York, but we in Flint, Michigan, filibustering around because people don't know how to make of corn and stuff, but in FEMA, you won't talk about you ain't involved with it, but FEMA is got the money, just wait until you have a disaster and taking care of one individual at a time without letting the people panic. And then you put it on the kids, talking about they got 2 years old to 3 years old, like the state own the kids when they come out of their mama body. Like, people don't know that. You don't own the mothers gotta speak up in this generation. That's all I'm gonna say. It's Mr. Mitchell. Over and out. Thank you very much. Let me say that much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mitchell. So I wonder then if there's nothing else to say about that topic, if we should move on to talking about the CCR that's in development here. So this is hot off the presses. Yes, Scott, this is last year's, but this is something that, okay, sorry, I thought that you were already working on the draft for next year.
Early February, we'll start.
Is when you'll start cooking on that.
For the year of 2023.
Great, okay, so, this is one of the reasons why I was really hopeful that we could, make a decision about the facilitation offer tonight, because, I think it would be great if we could use some of that help to, kind of develop, some sort of process for not only the council kind of evaluating and chiming in on the CCR, but the broader community. I mean, I would let, CCRs notoriously, I think almost always go right into the trash or the recycling bin when they show up in people's mailboxes. I'm constantly hearing that, from water people, nobody in my community reads the CCR, So, I think the question is, how do we turn this into something that gets people's attention, that has information in it that is not only meaningful, but is presented in a way that people are gonna find understandable and engaging. I have seen CCRs from other communities that are pretty impressive in terms of, how slickly they're designed. I know that takes resources and, a certain kind of expertise and so forth. So we understand that here in Flint, we're operating within some limitations. But part of what I was thinking is that, boy, it would be great if we could ask people, like, what do you want out of this document? Because if people feel invested in this thing, like it's something that they have helped to shape in some sense, that they've had input on, then I think the chances go up that when it shows up in the mail, it's not just gonna get thrown right into the trash, that, people will have extra reason to be interested in it. So I was thinking if we could have some help, collecting some data on that, collecting some feedback, that could be a way of kind of filling out our recommendations as a council. Nair, it looked like you had something.
Just also thinking about, like, lack of better terms, like, how can we make this sexy? Not just like in the, the packaging, but like the community. Like, what is maybe doing like some pop-up, like, what is a consumer confidence report? What do y'all know about it?
Yeah.
Like, why do you think it's important? Because, like, a lot of stuff, because it's like mandated, it's just like, okay, just go right to the garbage, it may be on the website. I too have, looked at other communities, and they can be all over the place,
Yeah.
Flint is pretty decent, all things considering, but just like figuring out like a way to, one, because I know that there's some mandated language that has to be in there, and you can't get around that. But just like the, like the rollout, or just thinking like the other ways that we could, like what would be the highlights, and I know that we have time to really kind of possibly dive in deeper or brainstorm at another meeting of like how we roll this out and make it fun,
Well, and I think that one thing that would be nice is if, and I'm not saying that you look at these this way, Scott, but I think probably a lot of utilities look at the CCRs as an obligation more so than an opportunity, like in the sense that this is required by federal law. It's kind of, you got to check that box, every year. It's going to go up.
When you're on tight budgets, give me what regulations ask for.
Yeah, that's right. What is the bare minimum that I need to do?
About 5 years ago. It was black and
I remember that.
Yes, yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, no, but when you have limited capacity, it's really easy to kind of get into that sort of bare minimum mentality, I think, is what do I absolutely have to do? What am I going to get in trouble for not doing, right? I'll do that, and then we'll call it good, and I'll focus on something else that's more important. So I understand that, but, I think it would be great if we got to the point where we were looking at this as an opportunity, rather than an obligation, and an opportunity in multiple ways. Like, so one of those ways would be, and I've seen this in other CCRs, is that there are other water utilities out there that are taking this as an opportunity to kind of tell a particular story, to tell their story, to tell the story about what kind of work they are doing already on a day-to-day basis. What are their plans for the future? What are the next big things they're looking at? What is the overall what is their overall assessment of kind of where things stand within their water system. They also use it as an opportunity sometimes to humanize, I think, the work that they're doing by, putting the actual faces of people, who are doing the work in there and telling their personal stories. What are they contributing to this work? I think that would be the kind of thing that would be fantastic in Flint, because I think that's part of the disconnect between the utility and residents sometimes, is that, yeah, you are going into people's homes, here and there, but, most residents just don't have the opportunity to interact with people who are, responsible for their water. And if, at the very least, if we could kind of get some of those faces in front of people and just sensitize them a little bit to the work that's going on, that it allows for more of a feeling of connection. It allows people to relate to the utility, I think, in a different kind of way. So that, to me, that's one of the opportunity things that I guess I see in a future version of this document. But
Excuse me, sir, there
yes.
is an opportunity to highlight this situation. At this last city hall council, there was a water baby appeared. He was born in 1997, and he found his way to the council meeting, and he allowed to talk, and that's is the main highlight opportunity to. But then you see what happened. It's just like they broke up the form, and what the baby made a statement what's going on, and he grew up all successful, but he let it be known. You can get that tape, and that's the highlight of the opportunity, whatever you're talking about tonight, before FEMA come in here and declare the city a disaster, but the money's coming in no matter what. And we the people's gonna get the money, we'll spend it. You know what happened to them inspectors, like the guys, the slum landlords, they now they don't know how to start back up. Like, look at her, I can't call her name right, but that's Miss FEMA there herself.
I don't work for FEMA, I work for the city of Flint. You know me, I'm up in the front desk, and when you walk
Say
in.
the name again, because
Faith. Yep.
Because you got to talk direct to people. You get people's name messed up, and the people don't know how to come to the council meeting. But this fellow, there's a whole lot of them like that in the third ward, and this council man didn't show up. Murphy, and they want to have their input, what's going on, and they don't know how to get through anyway. These people got to come in and talk for themselves, because they survivors of the water poisoning situation. And like Amigo over there, they put them bricks down so nice, but somebody had to be filibustering, be out of all that money come to Flint. They got to get paid triple time for taking them back, and the man gonna retire in 3 more months. And get people to replace him. Wow, I like that guy right there. He listens, but he seems like he knows what's going on over there at the water department. All them guys. That's all I'm saying, sir.
I think you're right, Mr. Mitchell. So I want to ask you, Scott. So, when you hear me say something like that, maybe we could tell stories and hear an individual. I mean, what comes to your mind? What kind of resources, support would you need to be able to do something like that?
CCR? Back to CCR?
Yeah, within the CCR, sorry.
Any type of wording, obviously, what's in there has to stay in there,
Mm-hmm.
information-wise, but
Yeah.
you can also add, you can always, you can add where we're headed, some of our capital improvement projects, you can give a little more history of Flint.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about money.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care what you do with that, as long as you have the minimum requirement of what's on it.
Right.
Because that's a minimum requirement.
But do you currently have resources to do something like, say, hire a graphic designer or something like that? You don't have that.
I have a suggestion.
We have a predetermined format at the print shop that we've used for the last several years.
Mhm.
I think our contract's up, so we're gonna have to bid it out. That's why I brought this up. If you're gonna make the changes, we need to do it this year.
Yeah. So
we can get it formatted and get a new bid of what it's gonna cost.
I get a lot of folks contacting me about internships. I think this would be a really good public health education internship. The person could go maybe into the school or maybe into a classroom and do a presentation and get some feedback. maybe apply some like plain language principles. Laura and I just did a webinar on using plain language and got a lot, like a very easy to apply but useful tips that could be, you know, maybe start small and not like make big changes, but make a few changes and then get some feedback and over time maybe do some more.
And a young person with an artistic eye, at this moment in time, we've got one graphic in the thing, and it's a heavily pixelated image of, I don't know what exactly, water falling into water or something. We got to be able to do better than that. Yeah,
But along that line, Scott speaks as a water professional, and to have him in a video, no matter how short, would be extremely helpful. And he would have to stand in front of every class or every PTA or
Yep.
every group. Because we can talk about what the report says, but they have to see something. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Scott, but you're the man.
But that's, yeah.
And, you know, like, we have, the city of Flint has like these social media accounts, and it's like, why aren't they highlighting staff? Like, why aren't they highlighting, like, I mean, I feel like we should, because that too kind of humanizes, like, these are actual people, like,
Yeah.
these aren't like faceless
Yeah.
monsters, like, because like when people think of like government and bureaucracy, it's just these nefarious people who have a face or a name and
Right.
just like like I like even like TikTok, like, hey, I'm here, it's all I work here, this is what I like about
Yeah.
like it could just be kind of
And
a
also
thing.
find people to replace it when he decides to retire.
Well,
You gotta get the big picture.
That's right. Well, and as you well know, Scott, I mean, the whole water industry is facing a real crisis in terms of young people taking an interest in the profession. And, I think that's another thing that I would love to see us doing more around here is trying to recruit from within the community and getting people excited about this kind of a career. And you're not going to do that unless they see people, especially people who look like them, who are talking about the work that they do and, expressing enthusiasm for it. I mean, that could be a great recruiting tool as well, it seems.
Not to beat a dead horse, but I'll remind you all, the only person who was prosecuted or lost their job during the whole so-called crisis was the water person supervisor who said, I'm not doing this because I want to. Everybody else has gone unconvicted. So we should not forget that part. So they need to see that we have water professionals and people who are that.
So, speaking to this whole question of where could the money come from, and this is the thing yes, here we go. This is on our agenda technically for later, but we're off agenda anyway in multiple respects. So, the folks who are on the council will know that recently, do you have a question, comment, concern?
Can we go get him some water?
Fantastic.